I'd always wondered what my last thought would be before I died. Kneeling on the execution scaffold with silver chains burning my wrists, I finally had my answer. This is wrong. Not wrong that I was about to die. We all die eventually. Wrong that I would die for someone else's crime, framed so perfectly that even I had doubted myself in the dungeons. Wrong that the real traitor would walk free while I bled. Wrong that my mother's legacy would end here, her bloodline extinguished, her gifts lost. The executioner raised his blade, and I lifted my chin. If these were my final moments, I would face them with the same defiance my mother had shown 5 years ago on this same scaffold. I would not give them my fear. Then the Alpha King's voice rang out across the courtyard, "Stop!" And everything I thought I knew about my death, about my life, shattered. The blade froze mid-arc. Every head turned toward the disturbance. Alpha King Alfie Tyler himself strode through the crowd, and the pack members parted before him like water before the prow of a ship. His presence commanded absolute silence. He was imposing, tall, with long dark locks pulled back in intricate patterns, wearing ceremonial armor trimmed with fur despite the warm morning sun. Warriors flanked him, their faces scarred from battles won and enemies vanquished, but it was the king who made my heart stutter in my chest. He mounted the scaffold with deliberate, predatory steps. The ancient wood creaked beneath his weight as he circled me slowly, examining me like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. His nostrils flared as he scented me, drawing in my fear, my desperation, my rage. Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, or recognition of something unexpected. Those dark eyes found mine, and the world tilted. "This Omega claims innocence," he announced to the crowd, his voice carrying across the courtyard with effortless authority. Every word was measured, deliberate. "I will test her claim myself." Gasps rippled through the assembled pack members like wind through wheat. Nobles clutched their fans. Common folk gaped openly. The king leaned down, his face inches from mine, close enough that I could see the exhaustion beneath his commanding exterior, shadows under his eyes, tension in his jaw. "Survive one night in my bed, Omega," he said, low enough that only I could hear the rough edge in his voice, "and I'll spare your life. I'll give you 3 days to prove your innocence." His eyes searched mine, looking for something I didn't understand. Fear, defiance, truth. "But if you break before dawn..." He straightened, addressing the crowd again, his voice ringing clear. "Then the scaffold will still be waiting." My mind reeled as the guards unlocked my chains. The silver left angry red welts on my wrists, already beginning to blister. Rough hands hauled me to my feet, and my legs nearly gave out after hours of kneeling on the unforgiving wood. I was Pauline R. Gwynn, the orphan daughter of a disgraced healer. My mother had refused to poison the old king's enemies 5 years ago. She'd valued honor over obedience, and was executed for it on this very scaffold. I'd been 11 years old, watching from the crowd as they hanged her. Since then, I'd survived by working in the palace kitchens, invisible and unimportant, scrubbing pots and hauling water while nobles walked past without even seeing me. Until 3 days ago. 3 days ago, royal guards had dragged me from the scullery and thrown me before the council with evidence I couldn't deny. My dead mother's healer's kit, retrieved from wherever they'd stored her confiscated belongings. Her sigil. Even her handwriting on a vial of wolfsbane poison meant for the king's wine. Someone had framed me with meticulous precision, and I had no way to prove otherwise. As the guards dragged me toward the castle, I caught one last glimpse of the courtyard. Nobles whispered behind jeweled fans, their eyes hungry with gossip. Common folk gaped in shock at the unprecedented intervention. And in the shadows near the council platform, one figure watched with an expression I couldn't quite read, cold, calculating. The head counselor. The same man who'd pushed hardest for my immediate execution without trial. Who'd presented the evidence against me with such certainty. Who'd called me a threat to the kingdom's stability. His pale eyes followed me until the castle walls swallowed me whole. The massive castle doors closed behind us with a sound like fate sealing shut. The courtyard's noise, whispers, gasps, the buzz of scandal, cut off abruptly, leaving only the echo of boots on stone and my own ragged breathing. I'd survived the scaffold. Now I had to survive the Alpha King. The castle corridors seemed endless. 2 guards flanked me, their faces carved from stone, offering no comfort or cruelty, just silent, grim efficiency. Their boots echoed against ancient flagstones while my bare feet made no sound at all. I was a ghost being led to her haunting. The castle was a maze I'd never seen despite 5 years working in its kitchens. Servants used back passages, narrow and utilitarian. These halls were meant for nobles, vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow, flickering torches casting dancing light across tapestries depicting wolves hunting beneath full moons. The woven beasts seemed to track my movement, their embroidered eyes gleaming with reflected firelight. My mind raced despite my exhaustion. I'd heard stories whispered between kitchen maids about Omegas chosen by powerful alphas. Most were never seen again. But the rumors about King Alfie were darker still, that he'd ruled alone since age 19 when assassins murdered both his parents. That he trusted no one completely. That he'd been searching his entire reign for something he could never find. That his bed was a place of testing, not pleasure. What test could I possibly pass? I was nobody. A servant who scraped pots and hauled water. My fingers found the small leather pouch hidden in my bodice, the familiar weight grounding me. Inside was a single dried sprig of moonflower, all that remained of my mother's belongings after they'd burned everything else. She'd whispered to me before her execution, "Our bloodline carries an ancient gift, Pauline. When the time comes, you'll see what others cannot." I'd never understood. Now, walking toward either salvation or destruction, I wondered if I'd die without ever knowing what she meant. The guards stopped before massive oak doors carved with snarling wolves frozen mid-hunt. One knocked firmly, 3 measured strikes, then both turned and retreated down the corridor without a word, abandoning me. The doors swung open slowly, as if pulled by invisible hands. Heat billowed out, oppressive and intense, not the comfortable warmth of kitchen hearths, but the scorching heat of a forge that remakes metal or burns it to ash. Enter Pauline R. Gwyn, daughter of the trader healer. His voice emerged from within, dark velvet wrapped around smoke. "Let's see if you're as innocent as you claim." I stepped across the threshold. The doors closed behind me with a sound like a tomb sealing shut. The chamber was vast, larger than the entire cottage I'd shared with my mother. Furs covered the stone floor in thick, luxurious layers. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one wall, its posts carved from whole tree trunks still bearing their bark, the headboard decorated with wolf skulls that watched me with hollow, accusing eyes. Fire roared in a hearth large enough to stand in, the flames casting wild shadows across walls lined with weapons, swords, axes, daggers gleaming with lethal promise, alongside maps marking territories and battle plans. This wasn't a room for comfort. It was a war room that happened to contain a bed. Alpha King Alfie stood by a table laden with food and wine, his back to me. He'd removed his ceremonial armor. Now he wore only dark leather trousers and a loose linen shirt that revealed powerful shoulders and arms marked with scars, the body of a warrior, not just a king. His long locks hung unbound past his shoulders. When he turned, his face stole my breath. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and those penetrating dark eyes that seemed to see straight through flesh to the truth beneath. "You haven't been prepared," he observed, his gaze sweeping over my torn servant's dress and bare feet. I lifted my chin, refusing to cower. "Does it matter? Tell me, Pauline." He moved toward me with predatory grace. "Do you know why you're really here? To survive your test or die trying." His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Partially correct." He stepped back abruptly, breaking contact as if burned. Without a word, He moved to the table and poured 2 goblets of wine, offering me one with steady hands. Drink. You'll need your strength. I stared at the dark liquid, suspicion warring with thirst. I hadn't had water since the dungeons. If I wanted you dead, you'd still be on that scaffold, he said, reading my hesitation. The wine isn't poisoned. I drank. The warmth spread through my chest, loosening the tight knot of terror that had lived there for 3 days. Someone in my inner court is a traitor, Alfie said bluntly, watching me over the rim of his own goblet. They've been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect opportunity. They chose you because you're nobody, an orphaned kitchen servant with a traitor's bloodline. Easy to frame, easier to execute, and no one would question it. The words stung even as they confirmed what I'd already known. I was disposable. Then why stop my execution? I found my voice, steadier now. Why risk alerting them that you suspect something? His expression turned calculating, almost predatory. Because they made a mistake. They involved you. He set down his goblet. And when I scented you on that scaffold, I realized you might be the key to unmasking them, if you're who I think you are. Who do you think I am? I asked, genuinely confused. I'm nobody. You said so yourself. Your mother wasn't just a healer who refused to poison my father's enemies. He moved closer, each word deliberate. She possessed an ancient bloodline gift called truth sight, the ability to see poisoned intentions, to sense tainted hearts. It's why my father valued her, why his enemies hated her. My breath caught. My mother's words echoed. Our bloodline carries an ancient gift. That's impossible, I whispered. I have no such gift. Not yet. His dark eyes pinned me in place. Gifts like hers require a trigger to awaken, usually extreme danger or a bond with someone carrying a complementary gift. He paused meaningfully. Like my ability to scent lies. Understanding crashed over me like ice water. This night serves 2 purposes, Pauline. To test whether you're innocent, and to see if your dormant gift awakens in my presence. He moved toward me again, deliberate and predatory. Because if it does, you're the only person in this castle who can identify the traitor. I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. I survived 5 years in your castle kitchen after watching my mother die. I'll survive 1 night in your bed. His hand caught my wrist, pulling me closer with firm but careful pressure. Brave words for someone trembling. Up close, I could see past the commanding presence to the exhaustion etched in the lines around his eyes, the weight of ruling alone, of trusting no one, of constantly watching for the knife aimed at his back. He looked older than his years, worn down by a decade of isolation and suspicion. I'm terrified, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I'm not a coward. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. When his hand moved to span my waist, skin meeting skin where my torn dress had pulled away, something ignited between us. It wasn't just physical attraction. It felt like recognition, like 2 pieces of a puzzle that had been searching for each other, suddenly sliding into place with an audible click. Alfie's entire body went rigid. His nostrils flared, his eyes darkened to pure black, and a low growl rumbled from deep in his chest. "What are you?" he demanded, but there was no accusation in his tone. Only awe. "What?" I breathed, confused by the intensity of his reaction. "Your scent. It's—" He struggled to find words, his hand tightening on my waist. "I've been searching for this for 10 years. Since the day I took the throne." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Searching for what?" "Fated mates are rare," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Most alphas never find theirs. I thought I'd rule alone forever, die alone, trust no one." His hand slid up to cup my face with surprising gentleness. "But you're mine. Fate has bound us. I should have been frightened. This should have felt like another trap, another form of captivity. But instead, heat spread through my body, my omega nature responding to his alpha on a primal level that bypassed conscious thought. Yet my mind rebelled against the claim. I don't belong to anyone, I said firmly. Fate or otherwise. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I shivered. Good. I don't want a possession. He paused, seeming to surprise himself with his next words. I want a partner. Someone who can stand beside me. Someone I can trust. You don't know me, I whispered. Then let me learn you. His forehead nearly touched mine. Let this night be more than a test. Let it be a beginning. When his lips met mine, it wasn't forceful or dominating. It was searching, questioning, asking permission even as he took it. The kiss deepened as I responded despite myself, my hands finding his shoulders, anchoring myself as the world tilted beneath my feet. When we broke apart, both breathless, his voice was raw with vulnerability. One night, Pauline. Give me one night to prove we're stronger together. The fire burned lower as hours passed, casting the chamber in amber shadow. Clothing fell away slowly, not torn in haste, but removed with deliberate care, as if unwrapping something precious that might shatter if handled roughly. Throughout the night, our physical connection intensified, each touch building something I couldn't name, each intimate moment testing whether I could withstand the full force of an Alpha King's presence without breaking. The passion between us was intense, consuming, but it never lost its foundation of growing trust. In quieter moments, tangled together in furs and firelight, Alfie shared pieces of himself I sensed he'd never revealed to anyone. I was 19 when they killed my parents, he said, his voice rough against my hair. A coordinated attack during a peace summit. I watched my father die trying to protect my mother. I held her as she bled out in my arms, telling me to trust no one. His voice cracked slightly. I've ruled for 10 years, and every single day I've wondered who I can trust. Who's loyal? Who's waiting for their moment to strike? I traced the scars on his shoulder, each one a story of survival. My mother was executed when I was 11. I watched from the crowd as they put the noose around her neck. The memory still burned. She looked at me once, just once, before they dropped the platform. She wasn't afraid. She was proud, like she'd won something by choosing honor over survival. His arms tightened around me, understanding in the gesture. As dawn approached, something shifted. During our most intense connection, images flashed behind my closed eyes, sharp and vivid, but not memories. I saw the head counselor's face twisted with cold satisfaction. I saw him in the healing ward, carefully removing my mother's supplies from locked storage. I saw him directing guards to my quarters in the kitchen wing, planting evidence with methodical precision. I pulled back suddenly, gasping. I saw him. The counselor. He framed me. Alfie stilled completely, his hands framing my face. You saw this? How? I don't know. My heart raced. It came to me like a waking dream. His heart looked wrong, shadowed, corrupted. Wonder and fierce satisfaction crossed Alfie's features. Your truth sight is awakening, he breathed. The bond between us is triggering it. The first gray light of morning filtered through the high windows, turning the chamber soft and ethereal. Exhaustion and passion had created an altered state between us, raw, honest, stripped of every pretense. I lay in Alfie's arms, both of us covered in sweat and marked by our night together. But one thing hadn't happened. He hadn't claimed me with the permanent mating bite. As we moved together one final time, something shifted. Alfie lost himself in the intensity of our connection, his control fraying at the edges. His canines elongated, sharpening into points capable of delivering the claiming bite that would mark me as his forever. Every line of his body screamed with primal instinct to mark me, to make me irrevocably his. His teeth pressed against the vulnerable curve of my throat where my pulse pounded wildly. I didn't submit. Didn't bare my neck in Omega surrender as instinct demanded. Instead, I met his eyes directly, my hands framing his face with trembling fingers. "Not like this," I whispered firmly, even as my body sang for the bite. "Not because you can't control yourself, but because we both choose it. I won't be claimed by instinct, only by choice." My words cut through his feral haze like a blade through silk. With a growl that held both frustration and admiration, Alfie pulled back, his canines retracting slowly. He pressed his forehead to mine instead, breathing hard, his entire body shaking with the effort of restraint. "You're stronger than any warrior I've ever known," he admitted, voice rough with awe. "To face down an alpha on the edge of losing control and demand your own agency." He laughed, slightly shaken. "You're magnificent." Understanding crystallized between us. "This is why we're fated," I realized aloud. "Not because I'll submit to you, but because I'll challenge you. Balance you." "Yes," he agreed, his eyes holding mine with fierce intensity. "I don't need another subject. I need an equal." As full daylight broke across the chamber, Alfie helped me dress in one of his shirts, the fabric falling to my thighs. His touch was gentle now, reverent. "I have something to show you before I release you to your 3 days of investigation," he said. "Something that will prove everything, your innocence, our bond, your mother's legacy." "Where are we going?" I asked. His smile held promise and mystery. "To the seer's chamber, where truth cannot hide." Alfie led me through hidden passages I'd never known existed despite 5 years in this castle. We climbed a spiral staircase that seemed to ascend forever, my legs trembling with exhaustion and anticipation. Finally, we emerged into a circular chamber at the castle's highest point. Dawn light streamed through windows on all sides, painting everything gold and rose. In the center stood a massive crystal orb on an intricately carved pedestal, pulsing with dormant energy that made the air hum against my skin. "This was created by my ancestor, the first Alpha King, and his mate," Alfie explained, his voice hushed with reverence. "She was a truth seer like your mother. He could scent lies. Together, they built this kingdom on foundations of truth and justice." He gestured to the crystal, and I could see his hand trembling slightly. "The heart of justice only responds to fated pairs who carry complementary gifts. If we're truly meant to be, if your truth sight has truly awakened, it will show us." I stared at the crystal, understanding the magnitude of this moment. Everything hung in the balance. My life, my future, the truth about my mother's legacy. "What if I still choose to leave?" I asked carefully. "Even if it proves we're fated?" Pain flickered across Alfie's features, raw and unguarded. But he nodded. "Then I'll honor my word. You'll have your 3 days and your freedom after." He paused, vulnerability naked in his eyes. "But I would ask you to consider staying, not as my captive or even just as my mate, but as my partner in hunting those who would destroy us both." I reached for the crystal, my hand trembling. "Together," I whispered. Alfie's hand covered mine on the crystal's smooth surface. Light exploded through the chamber, blinding and beautiful. Visions cascaded behind my closed eyes like falling stars. I saw myself standing before the royal court, my truth sight fully activated, pointing at the head counselor as his heart blackened before everyone's eyes. I saw Alfie and me bent over investigation notes late into the night, piecing together conspiracy threads. I saw his protective hand on my waist as I faced down skeptical nobles who questioned an Omega's right to stand beside their king. I saw my body swollen with our first child, both of us beaming. I saw us aged and silver-haired, surrounded by children and grandchildren who carried both our gifts, truth-scenting and truth-seeing, ensuring justice for generations. Through it all ran a sense of rightness, of 2 puzzle pieces finally finding their fit. When the light faded, we stood facing each other, hands still joined through the crystal, both breathing hard. Tears streamed down my face. I saw everything we could be, I whispered. And? Alfie asked, his voice breaking with hope and fear. I'm staying. I'm staying, I declared, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. Not because you've spared my life or because fate has bound us, but because I choose this. I choose you. I choose to use my gifts to build something better than what killed my mother. I stepped around the pedestal, closing the distance between us. I watched my mother die for choosing honor over survival. I've spent 5 years hiding, diminished, afraid. No more. I met his eyes with fierce certainty. If we're fated, let's be fated on purpose. Let's choose each other with open eyes. Alfie gathered me into his arms, and his embrace spoke of protection without possession, desire without domination. My Pauline, he murmured against my hair, his voice rough with emotion. My mate, my truth-seer, my queen. I pulled back to meet his eyes. My Alfie. My king, my partner. Then with a fierce smile that held both challenge and promise, now let's go catch a traitor. We descended from the tower hand in hand as the castle awakened around us. My truth sight was fully active now. I could sense shadows around people's hearts, could see who carried darkness and who carried light. Combined with Alfie's ability to scent lies, we were an unstoppable force for truth. We arrived at the council chamber where nobles and advisors were gathering for the morning meeting. Whispers spread like wildfire as we entered together, the condemned Omega wearing the king's shirt, walking beside him as an equal, not a prisoner. The head counselor's face went pale as winter snow. Your Majesty, he began, his voice thin and strained, surely this Omega should be in the dungeons awaiting. Awaiting what, counselor? Alfie cut him off, his voice sharp as a blade. Awaiting justice? Then let's deliver it. I stepped forward, my truth sight focused on the counselor. To my awakened vision, his heart pulsed with black corruption, writhing like something diseased and dying. I can see what you've done, I said quietly, and the entire chamber fell silent. Every lie, every betrayal. You can't hide any more. As guards moved to apprehend the panicking counselor, Alfie and I stood united, two people with complementary gifts who found each other against impossible odds. The night I was supposed to die became the night I truly began to live. Together, we would transform the kingdom. Together, we were unstoppable. Survival isn't just staying alive. It's choosing what you're willing to live for, and who you're willing to fight beside. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, there's more coming very soon. I appreciate you for staying till the end. Your support means everything.